Hi there. I wanted to today talk about the Channel Awesome controversy and all the sort of drama that's been going on That Guy with the Glasses, or the former That Guy with the Glasses website. First of all, I guess, this is going to be a sort of more relaxed video than I usually do, just going to be me kind of talking, putting out some of my thoughts. I'm going to edit it down, obviously, and make it sound better. So I guess one of the first things I'll say is that I was really surprised to see the amount of people who are sort of in a similar position to me as people who, started watching the Nostalgia Critic way back in, for me it was probably about 2010, maybe 2009, 2010, something like that. Really inspired me to start creating content online. A lot of That Guy with the Glasses creators were people who I followed, who I was big fans of, and I still watch a lot of them to this day, whether they're still on the website or not. In particular, I think Lindsay Ellis is probably one of my favorite content creators online. I love, Kyle Calgren. And I sort of see what I've always sort of tried to do is really spread out my interest to as many of the creators as possible. So sort of, a lot of factions and divisions in this website. And I sort of always thought, I was sort of tried to follow a bit of all of them. So I also really like Lord Cat, for example. I think he's great. But, with that said, obviously the internet, the landscape of the internet has changed so much in the time, the 2011, 2010 days, because, I would watch those videos, and I enjoyed them for what they were. I always thought that, Doug's comedic timing was sometimes maybe a little off. Sometimes I didn't love every episode. I've never really loved every episode. I'm not a diehard fan, really. I wouldn't even say that, I sort of watched I've watched every Nostalgia Critic episode. I always tried to keep up with them, but I watch them as more just like, like you'd turn on a TV show and you'd kind of just casually watch it. I wasn't like a diehard fan where I was like, everything Doug does is perfection. But I was inspired by him. He inspired his style. I remember I don't think you can find it anywhere online, but he talked about his favorite movies of all time. He did a list of his 20 favorite films and introduced me to some great films. I saw Brazil because of him. I saw Amadeus by Milos Forman because of him. So he's definitely helped to, inspire me as a filmmaker, as a writer, as a content creator online, all this kind of stuff. But with that said, I guess what I'm leading to is that I always knew it wasn't that great, the stuff they were doing. In particular, the movies, the sort of the anniversary films. They were really hard to get through. I found that Kickassia is just unwatchable. Just total slog, just a total bore. Really boringly made and just badly executed. The next one, Suburban Nights, is a step up. I think cute for what it was. I guess, and then the last one, To Boldly Flee, which I thought was interesting because I'd probably say that I think that one's the best as a film. It's kind of cute how they're all, coming together. I think they tried to do, there were some bits that I thought were funny. I thought it was ironic that that seems to be the one that the content creators really hated the most, really hated more than anything. That really interested me because I thought it was the one that seemed the most professional. Now, you're looking behind the scenes and it just looks like, well, super ambitious, like 3-hour film, so self-indulgent. And also, I should also say, like, I haven't gone back to watch these films basically since they premiered. So it's not like maybe I would have a different view on it now if I were to go back, which I don't think I ever would. But anyway, this all sort of leads to the change the channel hashtag and the whole movement and the not so awesome document. And I guess I should say I come to this from a very probably different perspective than a lot of people on who've been following this and doing reaction videos to it and stuff, because I've followed a lot of these people for a long time, and I was following when Lupa and Lindsay Ellis and Phalis all left around a certain time. I was there to sort of witness what was going on there, and I saw those Skype chats, and I knew basically Alison Pregler or Obscurus Lupus' story. I knew that about years and years ago. And one thing you could definitely criticize about me is the fact that I stuck with that guy with the glasses, and I watched the show, sort of knowing that Michaud was kind of was a big jerk, basically. Like this was information that was not a surprise to me, and in particular the Lupus story was not a surprise to me. And then the other thing was that I do remember Lindsay Ellis years and years ago. I think times even when she was still on That Guy with the Glasses website and part of that team, saying that the anniversary experiences were miserable. Like this was something that she been talking about for a long time. What I didn't know were the details, and I don't think until this document has been out, many people didn't know the details. But I always sort of knew that something went horribly wrong during a lot of these, or I should say, many things went horribly wrong during these anniversary brawls, and a lot of people were not happy about the way they were run and what happened during them. Which I think is interesting, just that this information has been out for a long time, and that it's sort of now coming back. But it's coming back in a very, but it's coming back almost at a time where it doesn't really seem relevant anymore, I guess. Or it seems like it's all, it's all happened so long ago, and yet now this is when people are actually talking about it. I find that fascinating. I think, it's not as though this was calculated. I really don't think, these people were trying to drum up views for themselves or something with this. It seems very random, and it seemed to have just happened because of basically Allison posting on Twitter. Someone asked her a question about Doug Walker, Nostalgia Critic, like his latest video, and she's like kind of just lost it, just basically snapped on Twitter because she's sick to death of people asking her about this thing that people believe she's still associated with, that she's of course not associated with, and is actually very bitter about, rightfully so, I would say. But I guess all this sort of leads back to the question of why would someone still watch it knowing this information? I think now that a lot of these things are coming to light, I think the business practices and I think the more details and the more information we know based on the release of this document, I think I don't think I can go back to supporting Doug Walker and the Nostalgia Critic and the show and all that. I just don't think it's worth. I don't think the entertainment value, which is already been waning. It's already something that I sort of just watch just to watch, basically. And I think when you know that the ethics of the people behind that are kind of extremely questionable, and I think in Michaud's case pretty clearly not in a good place. Why bother? Why bother keep watching and supporting these people, giving them any kind of support? I don't think they deserve it. I mean, I've worked with people like in the industry. You know people like Michaud, I think in particular, people like Rob Walker, maybe Doug Walker to some degree. People who because they're in a position of authority and status, first of all, they sort of put blinders on, and they sort of close out the criticisms of the outside world, because in their little echo chamber, they're the ones who are supported, because they're the ones who have the control over everyone else, right? You see, what I think is interesting is that, to me, there's a continuity, a very clear continuity between the content they produce and this response. It's all, and this is an accusation that's been thrown at them a lot, right? Is that it feels very half-assed, and I think that's very true. And again, I sort of watched the content knowing that. I watched the content knowing that, I wouldn't call it objectively good. The shooting is not very good quality. The the set design is like trying, but it's not really quite there. There's this idea that they push that they're a legitimate show, that they're a television show, and it's very hard to think of them that way for me, because but I think what's interesting is that that kind of half-assedness, that I think unwillingness to learn, unwillingness to really grow and improve themselves, is really tied in with, you know, this PR response, which, and even they're dealing with people, they're dealing with other content creators, their whole managing style and process on this website. It again feels very half-assed, very underthought, and shows an unwillingness to learn, take criticism, grow. A major lack of accountability, because, you know, when you're someone in Mashad's position, you don't need to be accountable to anyone. You're making money, you're basically have a guaranteed success with the Nostalgia Critic, you can do whatever you want. And so, you know, I think, you know, you do get to see people like this, and what makes me happy is that people in this particular case, this person is being held accountable and being shown that you can't operate like that. That's not the correct way to run a business. That's not the correct way to grow content. That's not the correct way to improve. I should also mention that another great sort of resource for me that I learned so much about, you know, who Mashad is, what he's sort of was responsible for, the way the website was managed, the sort of delusions of all these creators, was someone did, so Lord Cat has hours and hours of content of talking about Channel Awesome on his, I guess it's sort of like a podcast, vlog type of thing, and he just talks and talks, and so someone put together a supercut of every time he talks about Channel Awesome and all the ways that the creators were kind of screwed over and all the things he's done, and his sort of relationship to Channel Awesome and to Mashad and to the Walkers and all that. So I sort of knew the way that Channel Awesome was run. I knew the way they operated from very early on. It was something that I was familiar with. And I sort of, I will admit that, you know, I do love this drama. I do love just the human aspect of it, the social aspect of it, what it sort of says about, you know, the changing landscape of the internet, the changing landscape of gender, the changing landscape of all these things. I think it's fascinating. And so I sort of love following the train wreck of it all. I love following that. I love, you know, seeing someone like Brad Jones, for example, who is in the middle of this situation where, you know, I've always sort of found his position very confusing for me, because he seems like an incredibly nice guy. He seems like probably the nicest person on the website. Everyone seems to like him, and, you know, he's managed to continue to collaborate and continue to be friends with, you know, kind of both sides of this, right? He's collaborated with Doug, he's collaborated with Rob, and he, you know, obviously he's still on Channel Awesome as of now. And then he's also been, you know, he's collaborated with Allison, he's collaborated with Phelan, he's collaborated with all these big creators, and I just think it's really interesting that he's in this position where he sort of can't win almost, I guess, because, you know, it was fine when things were tame or relaxed and you know, and the tensions were kind of under the surface, but now, you know, it really is like you almost show complicity by doing nothing, you know, you kind of have to take a side. You're forced into taking a side, or at least he is. And now, you know, we're in a position where basically everyone has left the channel and more or less taken the side of the document creators. You know, now Brad is basically the only one, the last one left. And what does that mean for his position? You know, I think that's fascinating. I think it does show. It's unfortunate because I think lately Brad has been a big inspiration to me. You know, I followed with Disco, for example, his you know, his latest film that he did. You know, the fact that, like, I'm pretty sure Allison was in that, but then Doug Walker's in that too. You know, these are people that do not like each other, that have a lot of beef, and he managed to convince both of them to be in his movie. And I think you have to be a really great guy to be able to do that. You know, he had the respect of both sides, and I just think it shows as a creator the kind of person you should aspire to be in some way. I think that person who is friends with everyone, you know, but now, you know, it's what's unfortunate about that, of being that good person, is that now he's sort of thrust into this position where he almost comes out looking worse than anyone, because he's sort of sticking and being really loyal to the Walkers and to Channel Awesome. It makes him look like he doesn't care about all the things that have been thrown against him. And a lot of people have been defending him, but I don't think he's going to leave. I think he's going to wait for this to blow over. I think he's not going to say anything about it, ever, possibly. And I think he's just going to wait for this to blow over. And I think he's going to stay friends with probably most of the people who've written that document. And I think he's going to stay friends with Doug and Rob Walker. Now, as for the future of what Channel Awesome is, that I think is a way more difficult question to answer. I think right now, Rob and Doug have this idea of, fuck the haters. We're just going to plow forward. We're not going to be stopped. We're not going to be silenced by this. We're just going to keep going. And I don't think that's the right attitude to have by any means. Of course, they're atrocious. It's been covered a lot, so I'm not really going to talk about it. But their atrocious response to this was to all the controversies was it really was the final straw. I think for a lot of people. I think after that, especially that second response, I think a lot of people were just done. We're just done with it. Done with Channel Awesome, and that includes fans and that includes creators as well. And I think that now that Doug has, I think now that there's such a massive drop, I think you are going to have your diehards, you're going to have your people who are going to stick by him no matter what, and say I'm just here to be entertained. I don't care about all this. But I do think that I do not know if they will be able to continue this in a viable way in Channel Awesome. I don't know if they're going to be able to continue the show. I just don't know if they're going to be able to pull that off. And, I think in a lot of ways, I know this wasn't the intention of the creators, but, perhaps that's for the better. I do think that, this Nostalgia Critic is really a strange artifact, this layover from a different time, in the internet, in internet history, in internet culture. I think he's a dinosaur in a sense, that people are not really interested in that kind of content, kind of save for him. And there were all those copycats. Even I did stuff that was very much a riff on the Nostalgia Critic and that kind of thing when I was younger. You won't be able to find any of that online. But I think for Doug, it's I think for Doug, what's interesting is that the audience was already dwindling, for a long time, and I think that now this is it's going to be very hard for someone in his position to recover because he was already kind of walking a tightrope in terms of the content they created. Okay, so then the last sort of statement I want to touch very briefly on is the whole JewWario situation, the whole Justin Carmical situation. This one is difficult because, well, first of all, it's not really something that I think probably should have come out. This is going directly against the wishes of the people who. I don't know if there's really much for me to say in this position. I've never been a victim of sexual assault. I wouldn't want to speak about something that I wouldn't want to speak about something that I really don't have any stake in this sense. I think it's really unfortunate that a lot of people who did support him and who mourned him and were his friends are now forced to sort of completely reevaluate their opinion and their position for a very valid reason, of course, but it still must be very difficult. And traumatizing. I just last night I watched Mars Girl's video on this where she talks about how she spent 6 months out of her life making sort of a movie tribute to him, and now she sort of feels like that's wasted. What do you say for someone like that? I don't know. The one comment I sort of will make about this is that I think it goes in again with that sort of half-assedness that Channel Awesome has in regards to even that that forum post that they released, that they sort of didn't really think through the implications of revealing the dates. I think there's a big lack of understanding, generational maybe, a big lack of understanding of the depths that people on the internet will go to uncover and figure out information. And I don't think that this was done in a malicious way. It doesn't seem malicious to me. I think it was just more done out of ignorance. I just don't think they thought through the fact that someone was going to figure out the dates based on that. So another thing I just wanted to touch on really briefly is this Count Jackula response sort of to the JewWario situation. Because that's another thing that I think I could sort of speak to that I find interesting. I think in cases where someone who you trusted sort of betrays you, or even just when you feel like a sort of major injustice has been done, but maybe you're not one of the major sort of responsible parties, or you're just sort of a witness, a bystander. I think a big sort of response sometimes people feel they need to do is step in, and maybe it's a hero complex to say, I'm going to right this wrong. I'm going to be the one to make this better. And I think that's what's really interesting about his response, is that this is someone who, was just kind of there on the side. He wasn't a major player in this event, and it really was not his story to tell. He's sort of just a member of this, a very kind of tertiary, character in this story. And I think what's really crazy about this is that, I sort of understand, I feel why he felt he needed to do this, why he felt he needed to say it, was that, it was just motivated by anger, maybe a sort of irrational anger, an idea of saying, of I need to, of if I don't say this, then I'm gonna right this wrong. I think you do it for your own conscience too. I think in his case, what I get the sense is that he's someone saying, that I feel guilty that I didn't do more, and now I need to do something. I need to help. And what I think was really interesting was that, in those good intentions, in those really, I would say, good intentions of saying, I want to help this, I want to try and make this better, I want to right the wrongs, and I want to, be the person that Justin wasn't, basically, be the person with the courage to not just to lump them together by any means, but just to say that, be a good person, and sort of right the wrongs of this sort of fallen, hero, who's Justin. And I think what's really interesting is the backlash to that response, and also not only the backlash, but the actual consequences of that, of people being able to figure out who the woman is. I think that's just crazy because it's I think in his sort of response video to that, he sort of touches on the fact that, he regrets what he did. But still, that's not enough for people. I think I read on Twitter, Holly says, so why don't you delete that original video now? Now that you feel sorry for it. And for some reason he hasn't done that. For some reason he can't do that. And I think it's that there is still that feeling of, of I need to right the wrongs. But I think the lesson we can learn from that is that, sometimes, even though silence and just being supportive, or being a background player in the support, just being one of the many people supporting someone in a traumatic situation. In this case, the victim who was right in the middle of this. Sometimes that's all you can do, and that's all you should do. And just being respectful of that is so important. In my own life, there was a moment where I was helping a friend through a difficult situation, and I said to them, and I felt as though I wanted to do more. I felt I could have done more, but I also sort of learned, and I needed to respect the fact that that they would come to me, and I would fill the need that they needed me to fill in that case. And sometimes that was not being the one to instigate a very serious conversation or healing, but being the one to just to do the opposite. In fact, to just provide, being a good friend, just, having a good laugh or something, taking them out and having a good time, and not talking about the kind of horror and shame or sadness of what's going on. I think that it's a good lesson, I think, because, as a bystander, what you can do to sort of better yourself, and as a bystander, what you can do, and sometimes even doing nothing, sometimes what the value of really respecting the wishes of someone. But I think it's a very interesting case in Count Jackula. I don't know his real name, so it sounds silly. In his case, this feeling of needing to jump in, needing to be the savior, needing to be the rescuer, that I think, I just think I think it's fascinating. But still, it's a very unfortunate situation. But at the same time, I think it's positive in the sense that people are being held accountable for their actions. and now I'm sort of speaking generally. I'm speaking in general, saying that, I think I'm going to be I'm going to be very interested to follow this, to see where this goes. But at the same time, I do think it's probably winding down now. I don't know how much further this can all go. But, I do think there's some really good content creators out there who are on That Guy with the Glasses, who are still making great content, and I think they deserve, your attention if you're interested in the fields that they cover. I guess as a last point, I would just say that I would encourage everyone to go back and read the Not So Awesome document that was posted. I think there's some really interesting stories there, stuff you can learn if you want to be a content creator, looking out for people like Mashad, and even just a fascinating sort of look at these people and what they're really like. And with Mashad in particular, it just baffles me that someone can be that egotistical, can have that level of obliviousness to situations, and can care so little about people who they've like hired and who they're planning to support. Such a lack of planning, such a lack of discipline, such a lack of managerial skill of any kind, business sense, understanding of the internet, understanding content creation. Look, I think people like that. He found a very safe little because he now basically is the owner of the majority of the intellectual property of the Nostalgia Critic. I think he feels as though he's set for life, and I think he's gonna kind of rest on those laurels, or at least the money that's gonna create for him. And someone in a position like that says, why do I have to be nice to anyone? Why do I have to respect anyone? These are the people who you need to look out for in life. I think these are the people who are truly dangerous, and who truly make any kind of industry just worse, worse in general, to put it bluntly. And it's really unfortunate that the Walkers trusted someone like that. I think, not to say that they're perfect themselves, obviously, but I think Mashad is the biggest problem for sure, and the most significant, and also the biggest problem in terms of what we can take from this. I think that to sort of what we can take, and the lessons that we as complete bystanders and outsiders can learn. But as of now, I'm going to be following, probably for the next few weeks, I'm going to be following Channel Awesome. I won't lie and say that I'm just not going to watch any Nostalgia Critic. I want to see this fall apart. I want to see step by step. I want to see how they're going to choose to react, if they're going to address anything in the videos, if they're going to make an apology or a response video of any kind. I want to know that. So I want to keep my eyes on them and what they're doing. But once things die down a little, maybe they already have died down, but once things start really dying down, I probably will not continue to watch Channel Awesome and the Nostalgia Critic. I was already really leaning into being like, every time probably about the last 2 or 3 years, I've sat back and said, is it worth it? Is it worth going back and still watching this guy? Like, I don't enjoy so much of these. I don't enjoy the skits. Why am I even bothering? And I think this might be what pushes me over the edge to say, I just don't think I really need to, give my time and give my attention and give views to someone who's to a group that's this unethical. So yeah, so those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. I've sort of tried to watch a lot of people's response videos to this, but I would love to see if you want to send me any videos or comment any particularly kind of well-spoken response videos about this whole controversy. Please, comment those. And thank you so much.